interesting journey of how he ended up here on the peninsula working in the oyster business. But actually, before the peninsula, he was over on Bruceport, across the bay near South Bend. So, and he was from Denmark. He was on a guano sailing ship that went around Chile and Argentina, and shipwrecked, and all sorts of stories there. But ended up here working, and there were at that time not many white settlers here, and he heard about this woman that was a indentured servant to this lighthouse keeper, and she was from Denmark also. So he would row the length of the bay, which I would guess it'd be close to 30 miles. I'm not sure, but it's a long ways. And then he would somehow walk across the land here to get over here to visit her. And he did that 3 times. I hope he rowed with the tide. I hope he was smart enough to do that. 3rd time he came here and he said, honey, I'm tired of rowing, let's get married. So they got married, they moved back to the other side of the bay, and then they had 5 kids, the 6th one being my grandfather, and then they moved to where my gallery is today. They built that house. So we have some family background here. Also, this Waikiki Beach is actually kind of an old name for this beach. Back in the sailing days, the whaling days, the ships would come from Nantucket, East Coast. They come around the Horn, and they come up, and they would get sailors from Hawaii because apparently they were good seamen. And this bar out here is one of the most treacherous bars in the world. And if they lost one of the seamen, they would bury him right along here somewhere, and they would name a beach after where they came from. And so a couple of Hawaiians, my understanding is that they were buried here, so they named this Waikiki Beach. Okay? I think that's pretty loose. There may be a little more information there's more information on that, and maybe a little more details, and maybe I'm not totally accurate, but that's basically the story here. Can you guys all hear me okay with this? Yes. All right. Yeah. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to be painting like this. So you want to fan out on either side, and you probably, Jenny, where you're at. All right, here's an excellent spot. Right there behind Ruth. Okay. No, don't worry about blocking anybody.
And get as cozy as you want.
So who's the furthest away? Came here, Ruth or Jenny? I mean, you came from Oklahoma. Anybody else further than that? Who was it from San Clarita? Right over here. Okay. San Clarita or Santa Clarita? Yeah. California, just outside of LA. Yeah. Okay, so then there's bottled water over there next to my car, and also some snacks. Okay. So feel free. Okay, so here's the general guidelines here. Feel free to ask questions at any time about what I'm doing. Okay. I do not mind sharing and explaining what I'm doing here. But if you were to ask me a question about the names of my kids, when I'm in the middle of painting and you ask me the names of my kids, I don't know if I can tell you. Okay. My mind is on the painting. All right. So anything about painting or about what we're doing here, or painting in general. The other thing is I ask that, if you want to visit, feel free to visit. I mean, this is your vacation. Visit all you want, but I just ask that you do it someplace else, okay? I don't want to compete with the conversation that's happening up close here and trying to talk over that to somebody else. So if you want to visit, just go on out a ways and do that. All right? Okay, so let's get started here. As you can see, this driftwood here does not just come up here by itself. You can see that these waves get pretty big in the wintertime. They send these logs up here. So there's two. This is I think this is one of the only few places, if not the only place on the West Coast that has 2 lighthouses so close together. If you go on out the the jetty here a little bit, you'll see another lighthouse that we'll be going to in a couple of days, just right over here. This one was built first, but the ships that were coming down from the north weren't seeing it around the corner, and they were still getting shipwrecked, so they built another one. And if you ever look at a map of the shipwrecks that are here on the Columbia River bar, there are a lot of them. It's like someone peppered the area with shipwrecks. And even in my lifetime, we've had a couple, as a kid, shipwrecks. It's quite the treacherous bar. Now across the river is Astoria, where Joseph is from, and that is the oldest town west of the Mississippi. Okay, it was a trading post back in starting around Thomas Jefferson's time. Very interesting story about how this guy, John Jacob Astor, never visited out here, but he started this town out here. Then War of 1812 came along and went back into British hands. And very interesting. It's all built off of this was built off of the sea otter trade because their pelts are so valuable. Okay, back then. Then they'd take them to China, trade them up for other goods, and bring those goods back to the East Coast and back into Europe. Does anybody know how many hairs there are to a square inch of a sea otter pelt? 10,000? Huh? 250 hairs? 1 million. All right? Yeah. Yeah. I read that and I thought this has got to be a typo, and I looked it up, and that's what it is. And that's why, a sea otter doesn't have any body fat, and they live up in Alaska, but their hairs are so thick. That's why their pelts are so valuable. Okay. All right. So now, if the sun does come out, you might want to face your paper just like I've got it here, to where the sun is not hitting it. When the sun hits it, it's really hard to judge the values, the light darkness of your painting.
There's an eagle over there.
Over where? Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, there's lots of eagles around here now. Yep. It's right up there. Okay. This is on the peninsula area. This is one of the safest beaches to play in. The ocean beach. Gotta be careful there. Okay, let's see. Let's get my speaker around. I teach in very basic concepts because simplicity makes for a strong painting, and it also makes for a fun painting. If you get a few basic concepts I've held on to, and it's really helped me out because it's allowed me to fully express myself. In other words, we can go down a lot of color theory, what happens in certain lighting situations and all that, but if I try to capture all of that, I can miss the big overall interpretation that I want of the subject. So if you find that kind of thing interesting to study, and there's other things on perspective that's fine. But for me, I tend to keep things pretty simple, and it allows me to express myself with color and shapes more so than if I try to follow every thing that happens in nature. Okay. So this is called a value study, and it's very helpful for me in the painting. It's helpful because it helps me to see big shapes, big relationships. Well, now look at that. There's some people down here. That's kind of neat. Why don't we put them in here? But it also helps me to warm up to the idea of painting. I don't feel like painting every time I come out to do this, but if I get something down, it's not too long before I start to think, oh, that could be neat, kind of neat. That would be kind of fun to do, and I forget about myself and get into a painting. Okay, so these are shapes, and the shapes are very important to get interlocking shapes. In other words, we want to stay away from squares, rectangles, triangles, circles. Why? Because those tend to be awkwardly commanding, and the eye doesn't tend to go through them throughout the picture plane. But puzzle piece shapes, the eye will tend to move through them. You can direct the eye around through those shapes, and plus they're more interesting. A puzzle piece shape is just visually more interesting than a shape that has all even sides all the way around it, or circles, even diameter all the way around. So we do like variety. The human mind, the human eye likes variety. So we're really, as artists, we are really playing upon human desires, what entertains us visually, and um, interesting things entertain us visually, as opposed to uninteresting shapes like the squares, rectangles, and triangles. And variety interests us. It catches our eye. Well, when we go outside looking, we see something that catches our eye. So it's really, as artists, we are finding what visually is attractive to the human mind, and we use that in our paintings. And one of those things is shapes, making interesting shapes, making them interlocking, and they're like puzzle pieces. So you can see this sky comes down, goes up like this. This water goes like this. This goes like that, and then this headline goes like this. Okay, and notice I don't make the headline just straight across because that's not very interesting. I've got a zigzag here. Okay, that entertains our viewers. Now, that's not enough to go off of for a painting. We need to add values, and values are how light or how dark it is. And think of a black and white photograph. That's values, or a black and white TV. That's a value image. Value really doesn't have anything to do with color. It supports color, but it's something separate from color. So you can have red. Red can be dark, or of course black can be dark, but red can also be dark. Same with blue. And the human mind can see, I think, 440 value shifts in nature. Paint, since paint is a product and not light, it's a mineral. Minerals or synthetic stuff, it can only offer you about 40 value shifts. So we're very limited in what we can do with paint compared to 440 down to 40. That's still way too many value shifts. We want to limit it down to under 10. Okay, so we're going from what we see in nature from 440 value shifts down to under 10. It's a gross simplification of reality, and all artists use it. Even some of the most realistic artists, you can be very careful in your drawing and so on, and detail and make the illusion of reality. But even those guys, the best, will limit their values down to very few. And I like to start out my paintings with 3 value shifts: a light, mid-tone, and a dark. Now, it doesn't mean that I keep it absolutely to that, but that's what I like to keep it to that range, at least to start out with. And this is pretty easy to see that we have probably 3 value shifts. Okay, so I'm going to put in my dark first. This pencil is called a clutch pencil, and the lead in it is called a Nero lead, which I like very much because I can get some really rich darks in it. It's hard to erase, but it won't smear like charcoal. Okay, so those might be my darks, but let's put in some midtones now. Got a 1, 2, and a 3 value. So let's put in our midtones. And try to think of these shapes so big that you can cut them out with scissors. A third grader can cut them out with scissors. And they're so well defined. Now, not always my drawings are that well defined, but it's a good way to think about it and to clean up your drawings. You can see those two values, actually 3 values now. You see the value of the sky, value of the green grass up here, and then the dark. Okay. Here's another midtone here for the water. Now I'm going to stick in another little value back here for this headline, clear off in the distance. Well, it went a little bit dark, but that might have been like a 4th value. That's okay. All right, so basically we have 3 values, okay? A light, a midtone, and a dark. Now, sometimes I might come in and make one of these a little bit darker, like I might make the sand a little bit darker in the midtone. I might make some little darker strokes in my light for the clouds, and possibly even some little darker values within my darks, okay? So how many values do I have? Well, it's really semantics, I think is what we might say. It's really however you want to say that. You can say I have 3 values with some little adjustments, or you can say I have 4 values, or I have 6. Okay. A person who's really counting values might say that it's now turned into 6 values because I have those slight changes within my lights, midtones, and darks. For me, I like to keep it around, there's a nice dark right here. I like to keep thinking of it in terms of 3 with a few adjustments. It just keeps it clean in my head, okay? Now you have to, if you really are into outdoor painting, it's important that you learn to see with your eyes and not so much with your mind, and almost pretend that you haven't ever seen this before. Don't assume upon your reference. What you do is you squint down and you look at it and see what it is. If you squint down at this lighthouse situation, you're going to see that lighthouse is a dark value, or at least a good midtone, right? If you squint down, right? That's what you use for your judgment. But I would say in the past that there's always a certain percentage of students, especially those who are beginning, and I probably did the same thing when I was beginning, that see that lighthouse and they know that it's actually painted white with a black stripe. So they'll paint it white, okay? But that's making a very light value because they're letting their mind rule over what they see. So you have to pretend you've never seen it before, and you squint down and go, that's all a midtone there, at least a midtone. So,
Gary,
yeah.
on your, could you put your drawing back a second? On your values of your darks, you started out with your 3 big shapes there of the hills. The middle one, of course, appears the darkest as you're looking at it. But if you do that the darkest, doesn't that pull it forward in front of the other one that's right here, or not?
The middle, then pull it forward than this one right here.
Yeah.
It could, but you've got other tools back. One of them is just perspective of of the drawing here. That'll push it back. Yeah.
I had a photo of that on my drawing.
Yeah.
I was working on the same thing. It seemed like because that's closest to all be the lightest and the darkest, this big one in front. And yet, visually, it's like you're saying, your eye is seeing the darkest behind it.
Yeah, it's what you're saying is a good principle. Yeah, stronger value contrast, darker darks, lighter light. It will tend to pull it forward. But that's just one thing that'll tend to pull it forward. We have perspective that will push it back. So the way I will approach this is I will probably knock in all my darks here, and I will probably put some of my deeper darks over here in this corner to support my area of dominance. But
the lighthouse would jump out right forward if it were the darkest.
huh?
If the lighthouse would jump out at you forward if it were the darkest.
That would right there, yes, because you have such a strong value contrast. But I might, like right in here is a good spot to put a little notch of dark to support this area, to strengthen this area. But we do have such a strong perspective line here that I don't think that that's going to pull it too far forward. Okay, we'll just have to watch it and see.
Can I ask you a question here?
Yeah.
You know, the sky is the lightest, the water is medium, and the land is the darkest, or could you just repeat that?
Yeah, I've actually. Yeah, let's see what we got here. This is a little bit darker here. Okay, so in landscape theory, what happens in nature is, generally speaking, depending on where the sun's at, but generally speaking, and it's happening here. Your lightest value is your sky. Okay. The ground plane receives the light, and then bounces that light back into our head, back into our eyes, and so it loses some of the intensity of that light because it bounces off of the ground, so it's a little bit darker. Then we don't have any hills here, but that would be the next darker value. But then your verticals tend to be in shadow, and they're your darkest value. That's a classical landscape arrangement. But the sun, as it moves to the horizon, or if it's closer to the horizon, then you can have these things reversed. But that's in general. And that's basically what's happening here. So you have the decision to make, and do you want to make that? If you squint down, that water is actually up pretty close to the value of the sky. Do you want to leave it that light or make it slightly darker? And I think when I sketched this, it was slightly darker at that time. So yeah, so I actually made on this sketch to where my water is almost the same value as my midtone right up here. I doubt I'm going to make it that dark. Okay. All right. So we'll kind of watch that. Did that help or did that confuse things?
Yeah.
Okay. Remember, but that's what we just talked about was classical landscape principles. And if you like to paint what you see and capture that, then that's a good thing to know. But we can flip-flop these values all around as much as we want. So don't be afraid to ask a question about something that we've already talked about, because repetition is really important. Okay, so this is an HB pencil. Did you guys ever watch a show called Captain Kangaroo where the kids? I remember, like probably first grade or something. I used to watch that, and I think he had some sort of a magic drawing board that kind of drew itself. Obvious, I didn't know it, but at the time there's obviously somebody behind it that was drawing on it. I was just always fascinated with that. Kind of how those things kind of can stimulate you into a career. Okay, so now the decision is, what am I going to put in first? My midtones or my darks? Or my lights? Classical watercolor painting is going to say, put your lights in first, and then you just go darker and darker and darker. But that never made much sense to me, because there's sometimes in my paintings I will know exactly what I want to do with my darks or my midtones. Why fuss with my lights when I know what I want to do with my midtones? Okay, so, or my darks. So I think the better answer to that on procedure is just take the biggest, simplest, easiest shape that's clearest in your mind. Why not? Why start with the things that you're not so sure what you're going to do when you have the opportunity to work on the things that, yeah, you're pretty sure you know what you want to do there. Do those things what you want to know. You know what you want to do. Probably the last thing I would caution you with is be careful about doing detail too soon. Because the painting is built upon big shapes and big construction. It's not built upon the detail. Detail just seeds things. However, there have been times where I've known exactly what I wanted to do in a detail area, and it was important to me, and I started with some detail. Not very often, though. Okay? All right, so I've got my value study here that I can see. Look at that. The sun's coming out. Isn't that great? All right, let's get started. Okay, I'm going to show you guys something that I rarely show. Okay? And it probably, for some of you, it might be the biggest thing that you've learned in this class, okay? Right off the bat. Yeah, that one's really sticky there. I don't know what it is. All right, hopefully you see what I'm doing here, and that. See, it's getting sticky. Once it gets sticky, I have to fight it. And fighting the paints is not what we want to do. So, fresh pigment. Now, sometimes, if it's very moist out, where I'm painting or in the studio, I can use it for several days, but it's getting to be that time of year where it's getting sticky. So sticky paint, let alone hard paint does not work for my process here. You know, I have to be able to grab it and have it very responsive, and I can't if it's sticky or gooey. And that in itself can make, if you're not, I'm going to be wasting a lot of pigment, which is costly. It's going to cost something, but what really costs a lot is to have poor paintings because you're using sticky, hard pigment. Some of you maybe have been taught that you can just wet it and use it. Yeah, you can do it, but you won't have very aggressive. You won't have the results that you'll see in the paintings that I have in my studio. You maybe will wonder why your paintings look so soft and not very aggressive in color. Well, it's just simply this. Okay, so if you're concerned about wasting too much pigment, the easy solution is to just limit your colors to 4 or 5 colors, or some sort of a red, yellow, and blue, and you're set to go. And a lot of artists do that. I know of one oil painting artist, two, Velasquez. He had his own palette of 4 colors, and Robert Bateman the wildlife artist, only has 3 colors, 2 colors. Okay, I'll probably squeeze out all my pigments. I find that this is the palette, and you guys have gotten a list of the palette, I believe. I find that if I don't squeeze out all my colors, the color I didn't squeeze out is exactly the one I want when I'm painting, and then I don't have it, and it's annoying to go and squeeze it out. I lose my momentum in the painting, so I'd rather squeeze fresh pigment out. Life is too short to be working with hard, sticky pigment. So like one student said, basically I'm going to be throwing some paint away at the end of the week or my paintings. And so it's better to throw away some paint. Okay? But it's difficult. It's difficult for some to do this, to squeeze out fresh pigment. And it's unfortunate because they can spend a lot of money coming to my workshop, and if they'd only spent another $10 for fresh pigment, they would have a better experience. I had one student that was a shirt-tail relative, and he probably took 15 years from me and was a good architect, could really draw quite well, but every painting was kind of a muddy color. And every workshop, he would ask why it is that his colors are kind of muddy. And every workshop I would show that you need to, don't overmix and squeeze out fresh pigment. And it was actually just too hard for him to do. And it had nothing to do with finances. It was a psychological thing because his finances were such that he spent a lot of time traveling the world. And he could have squeezed out more pigment. But it just seemed too much like a waste. It was just too hard for him to do. And I understand, because I knew his background. He as a child had to end up raising his siblings. His parents were gone, and during the Depression. So it wasn't easy. So I hope I have convinced you, at least theoretically, that squeezing out fresh pigment is going to make your painting much easier, much better. Or at least having fresh. Sometimes I'll squirt it, and if it's going to be a kind of a damp winter day, it'll probably last into the next day, even may last most of the week. But most likely this will probably not last into the afternoon today, with the sun coming on it. Okay. So right there, that's going to help you out a lot on getting vibrant, colorful paintings. The next thing is don't overstroke. Do not overstroke your pigments. And that's kind of a hard one too, because it's the difference between 2 strokes or 4 strokes, okay?
Are you talking about on the paper?
Mm-hmm. And down here too. Yeah, both places. Don't overstroke. Okay, let's start with our midtones. And I'll take a hint of what we got up here. Let's go with cobalt blue and a little bit of yellow. So we've got, all right, see that right there? You see there's cobalt blue and there's cad yellow light on that one stroke. That's because the pigment is so moist, I'm able to capture both of those colors on my brush and not overmix them. And I'll rinse it out. Let's do the same over here. There we go. There we go. Nice rainbow, yellow and blue. Now the temptation is to come through and try to mix them together. No, don't do that. We're going to put some darks in here so I don't have to fill that all in right there. I could. Now you might just choose a green with something else. I just happen to choose cobalt blue and yellow.
And that's dry paper.
This is dry paper, yeah. Okay. So there's a mid-tone. Reflection down the water. Let's go ahead and start to put some more darks in. I'm going to put them right in here, right up here in the trees, and then we'll let that dry a minute, and we'll start putting it in down here while it's a little bit damp. And we can take my ultramarine blue. Red. Okay. Very little stroking back and forth here. I rinse out my brush, and I don't pick up the color really that's on my palette. By the way, my palette's at an angle. I'm constantly pulling in fresh color. I spray out the bristles a little bit.
Which size brush are you using?
This is my number 8 squirrel mop. And by pushing the bristles in, I can get some smaller bristles to make these trees. So I'll try to avoid getting my smaller brush, at least for right now. All right, if you were to look at these trees carefully, you'll see little bands of red in there. That's because my colors are very moist. Okay, so now we have some other darks down in here too. Let's put those in. I've got ultramarine blue and cadmium yellow light and a little bit of red there. And things are running together a little bit, which I kind of like. Gives kind of a loose look.
You aren't even looking at your value study. Is that because of familiarity of painting this?
It's probably that plus I kind of got that locked in my mind anyways. Yeah.
What was this one?
The question is, I'm not looking much at my value study, and it's partly familiarity with the subject, but it's also because I kind of got that locked in my mind anyways. All right, let's get to a smaller brush. Those of you who have taken classes with me for a while realize that I like to get not stop at the headland, but go right into the object next door. And I didn't do it on this one. Probably would have been a little bit better if I had, but we're still fine. So much of watercolor painting is really, a lot of it is, well, I know that that's maybe not quite what I wanted, but it's close enough, I'll move on. And a lot of it is like that. It's just saying, well, okay, I'll move on. And it goes against many of us who have been told by our parents, do not leave that unfinished, do not leave a problem, solve it, take care of it. Don't leave a mess. Well, in this particular case with painting, you kind of have to sometimes just go, I don't think that quite looks right, but it's probably might be close enough. Maybe I'll better just leave it. And that's going to make a good painting if you can do that. Or the chances are you're going to have a better painting. Okay, now I'm starting to do some detail, which is really early in the game to be doing that. But it's kind of what I felt. Right now we've got our lights and our midtones and darks established, and you can see because I painted fairly quickly with all three of them, they tend to run together. I like that look. It helps give me some soft edges. Soft edges meaning there's not a huge transition between these midtones and darks. But then it will allow me to come in, such as a spot like this right here later on now, where I might find a hard edge or two because it's near my area of dominance. Here, right down in here too. Okay, so I've already got my soft edges established. I don't need to make them; they're already there. And now it's just finding my a few hard edges when I tighten it up. So we were talking about what we want to do on a painting is we want to catch the viewer's eye at a distance with some good shapes and good values. Okay, we've got that going on here. The next thing that we want to do in a good composition is we want to carry the viewer's eye throughout the picture plane, not just one spot. That would be called a bullseye. And that's very uncomfortable for a viewer. They want to be entertained all the way around. So remember, we are in the entertainment business, visual entertainment business. Then we bring the viewer's eye to an area of dominance, and we hold it there as long as possible. For me, in this particular painting, I think that's pretty obvious. It's going to be this area right here where this lighthouse is at. Now we have about 9 tools that will bring our eyes to an area of dominance. And those 9 tools are, I've already mentioned some of them. One is stronger value contrast. Another one is detail. Another one is warm colors. You can see this is a warm color of yellow here, but also intense colors will draw our eye to that area of dominance. Placement, position near the center will draw our eye. Detail, placement, line work. If you have lines that are coming in or implied lines, those will also draw the viewer's eye. Strong contrast, hard edges. I think that's about all of them. I might be missing. Animation, that's right. A figure will tend to draw the viewer's eye. Now my figures are down here, but we'll make it so that it's more up here. So we've got some blue happening up there. That's kind of neat. And then I've some clouds. Now this is the first time I'm using the soup that's in the palette. All the colors that we've used so far are actually mixing together neutral gray. Okay? But that's the only time I've done that so far. Every time else I've been bringing in fresh color. All right, see, we've got stronger value contrast right here now around the lighthouse. Okay, so now if you squint out there, you can see that the water is quite a bit darker than the sky now. So it does shift back and forth, and I think I'll use this. In fact, the water now is much darker than the sand, and I like that idea. So let's go with that.
The soup again?
No, I'm actually using a little more of the blue mixed in there. And I'm letting the brush just kind of skip across. Create some water texture there. Huh? My size of my brush? This is my number 8. 8 squirrel mop, yeah. Yeah. The numbering system on the brushes is confusing. The squirrel mops are totally different than the round numbering. In other words, number 6 squirrel is like a number 16 round. Okay, so this sand is actually quite a bit lighter, so I'm going to leave it really light. Now, if you notice that it's a little bit isolated, that color, so it's always kind of good to bring a little bit of blue in from the sky. Show a few little waves here. And when you start to get that feeling of, I don't know what to do next, I'm not sure what to do next, it's probably because you are about done. And a slightly unfinished painting can be a very beautiful thing, but a slightly overdone painting is awful. Okay? So stop short.
I know.
You know that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We've all been there.
Been there.
After it's too late.
Yeah. So when you start to get that funny feeling of, I don't know what to do next, or you're hesitating, it might be that it is unfinished and you don't know what to do next. But for me, it took me a long time to realize that that was really a sign that I was done, and it wasn't that I was didn't know what to do next and I needed something more. It was a sign that it was time to quit. And so I'm starting to feel that. So
Your idea of drips, is that, those aren't intentional, I know. And do you always leave them in your
I
paintings?
just leave them. Yeah.
unless they're really objectionable, but most of the time they're not. If you gotta take them out, then you gotta do some scrubbing, and that always takes away some of the freshness of it. So
They give a painterly look.
yeah, so like the one that's, yeah, I mean overall it's pretty good. Now this drip right here is kind of strong. So what you can do, rather than lift it and try to change it, you can just put a couple of side strokes over it to kind of change it a little bit. But be careful about doing too much of that. Yeah, that's probably a little better. Now remember, this is a time of sketching and gathering information. It's really not time to. Well, I hesitate to say it's time to do a finished painting. And sometimes they do come out and they are finished and they can stand on their own. But a lot of times they're just sketches. And you can take a photograph or use this to do something that's more purposeful in the studio. Okay, notice I put some more blue in that sand to harmonize it. Now, why am I using the mirror to look at it? It's because one, it sets me back a distance from it. So in other words, I'm 3 feet from it here, but when I look into the mirror, it's another 3 feet. So I'm about 6 to 7 feet back by looking at it in the mirror. And I want to see if the whole idea holds up pretty well. You know, these drips are kind of strong. I think I just leave them. Yeah, they're probably fine. You start nitpicking your painting, and it doesn't work. It starts to fall apart. I do like the idea, though. I've taken some of that very neutral wash, which means all the soup that's down here, and putting in some of that right along in here. I don't know, I just saw that. So you can see that we're at the point in the painting where you really look at your painting to decide what it needs, rather than so much what is happening out here. You really look at your paint. Okay, so those strokes, I don't know if they really help that much. So that's always an indication to me that it's probably time to put down the brush. All right, so we want to catch the viewer's eye at a distance. We want to bring the viewer's eye throughout the picture plane, and then bring him to that area of dominance and hold him there as long as possible. If we've met those 3 objectives, you've got a good painting. we do not have to get involved in a whole lot of complex theory. The basics of good solid painting is very simple, are very simple, and it's easy to understand, but it's not easy to do. Okay, getting that hand-eye coordination going can take a while. You got to do paintings. You got to do a lot of them, but intellectually, it's not real difficult.
Do you usually leave white on the paper?
I try to, not always, but I try to leave some white because my wife says I like the white of the paper. and it's very acceptable. In watercolor painting, of the paper is very acceptable to leave as a light, and it can make your painting sparkle by leaving white. But it is true, my wife does like lots of whites. I like the white in the paper. Okay? Any questions?
Eric, you had asked us to not pour our paint before coming. Was it just a matter of it not drying out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you would come with a whole squeezed out palette and hard pigment. Put it out right before you paint. And really, you can limit it down to 3 or 4 colors. I'd stay away, if you're going to do that, stay away from the phthalo blue and phthalo green because they'll tend to take over everything. But any of the other